What can you tell us about the briefing that you received and the questions that still remain for you?
I was not alone in walking out of that briefing that lasted a little over an hour in feeling frustrated that we really didn't get any information or justification for the actions that the president took. It further affirmed what we kind of knew to be true, was that this was an illegal and unconstitutional act of war taken without coming to Congress first to seek a declaration of war and make the case to the American people. And I think that's the core issue, and one that we're seeking to address in the vote that we'll be having later today in Congress.
So Congresswoman, Senator Mike Lee made a lot of headlines yesterday. He said basically that the administration, the briefers, were not tolerating any real questions of dissent.
What I found so distressing about that briefing was that one of the messages we received from the briefers was, do not debate, do not discuss the issue of the appropriateness of further military intervention against Iran. And that if you do, you'll be emboldening Iran. The implication being that we would somehow be making America less safe by having a debate or a discussion about the appropriateness of further military involvement against the government of Iran. Now, I find this insulting and demeaning, not personally, but to the office that each of the 100 senators in this building happens to hold. I find it insulting and I find it demeaning to the Constitution of the United States, to which we've all sworn an oath.
Was that your experience as well?
Yeah, well, first of all, they didn't allow for many questions before they said, oh, time's up, we got to go, which on an issue of such great importance to our national security, to our men and women in uniform, to really not engage with representatives in Congress was a dishonor and disrespect to the American people across the country. I think there was, a few questions that were taken, but not really very many answers, even to some very tough and pointed questions.
It is not acceptable for officials within the executive branch of government, I don't care whether they're with the CIA, with the Department of Defense, or otherwise, to come in and tell us that we can't debate and discuss the appropriateness of military intervention against Iran. It's un-American, it's unconstitutional, and it's wrong. And I hope and expect that they will show greater deference to their own limited power in the future, and to the power that belongs to Congress.
Both about legal authorities and how it's possible that this administration is relying on a 2002 Iraq war authorization to use military force that very specifically says this is to authorize actions against Iraq. The Iraqi government, not Iran, failed to really answer questions very pointed in that respect, as well as a number of other things, especially the lack of evidence to prove the imminence that they were speaking about.
One of the arguments that's been bandied about in public, I think, is particularly insulting to logic, the Constitution, and the intent of our founding fathers. The argument has been made that the use of authorization of force voted on in 2002 to go to war with Saddam Hussein and his government is justification for anything they want to do in Iraq today, including killing an Iranian general. I see no way in the world you could logically argue that an authorization to have war with Saddam Hussein has anything to do with having war with people currently in Iraq.
This is not about us, it's not about any one of us. This is about our fidelity to those we represent. These powers are not ours. They don't belong to any of us. But when we allow them to be exercised through the wrong branches of government, with the wrong process, when you don't have debate and discussion, you don't allow the process itself to correct itself for the American people who will be most affected by these decisions to weigh in. That was insulting. That was demeaning to the process ordained by the Constitution, and I find it completely unacceptable.
I think it was Blair, the National Security Advisor, argues that 2002, the authorization to go to war with Saddam Hussein authorizes them to do whatever they want. So they have justified the killing of an Iranian general as being something that Congress gave them permission to do in 2002. That is absurd. That's an insult. And every time someone writes that Congress needs to take back their authority on war, That's what we're here to do. Let's have the debate, and let's have some senators stand up, and let's see if we can really, truly have a debate over who has the power to declare war. The reason it was put in and why every founding father said they were taking power away from the president is because they didn't want perpetual war. The president says he doesn't want endless war. Well, the way you have less war is by having less troops in the Middle East and also by having a more fulsome debate about when we go to war.
2018, in that year's National Defense Authorization Act, the big defense bill that's passed every year, there was a provision that was snuck in kind of in the final hour, 3 pages long, saying we authorize the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense to develop and implement a counter-Iran strategy without coming back to Congress for any kind of approval or authorization. And the key words there, develop and implement, basically was a blank check to the administration saying, go at it. You develop and you execute a counter-Iran strategy. This is a big problem for me, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
I introduced an amendment on the House floor that simply stripped that provision out of the bill, basically saying, if you want to go to war with Iran, come to Congress and make your case. You don't get to sneak this in the dark of night. Made that case on the House floor, brought it to a vote. 60 members of Congress supported my position of upholding the Constitution and Congress's authority to determine whether or not to declare war against Iran. And there was a majority of bipartisan support for this blank check. So I think it's important that we look to members of Congress now who are up in arms. When they had a chance to take action, they failed.
My advice to the president, both public and private, bring them home. The people are ready. Americans are ready. The Iraqi government is disdainful of us liberating them 3 times. Let them fight the next time. So yeah, I'm ready to bring them home. Bring them home. We spend so much money. We spend $50 billion in Afghanistan. That would pave 9,000 miles of 6-lane interstate. 9,000 miles every year of 6-lane interstate. Let's spend that money at home and quit wasting it overseas. They were killing each other before we got there. They'll be killing each other after we leave. They were killing each other before we got there. They'll be killing each other after we leave. They'll be killing each other after we leave.